was setting up the barbecue while the kids were playing on the river, and I told my family and sister to please look after my 2-year-old daughter. But they left her alone on a moving boat and came back without saying anything. So I asked them, "Where's my daughter?" And my sister casually said, "We didn't have time to wait for her." My father added, "Don't make a drama, tomorrow she'll be just there, the current always comes back." My mother said, "The kids are hungry, start cooking." I didn't shout. I did this. The next day, their lives started falling apart. People say revenge is a dish best served cold. After what happened that July afternoon, I learned it could be served at exactly room temperature while you smile and nod and let them think everything's fine. My name is Rachel, and I'm 32 years old. My husband Mark and I have 2 children, Emma, who's 6, and little Sophie, who just turned 2 in May. We live in Portland, Oregon, but my family is from a small town called Riverside about 90 minutes south, just past Salem. Every summer, we'd make the trip down for the annual family reunion at my parents' property along the Willamette River. The property is beautiful, I'll give them that. 20 acres of pine trees, a long stretch of rocky beach, and a dock where my father kept his fishing boat and 2 smaller vessels for the kids to play around in. Growing up, I'd spend every summer there, swimming in the cold water and roasting marshmallows over beach fires. I wanted my daughters to have those same memories. That's what I told myself as we drove down that Friday afternoon, our minivan packed with sleeping bags, coolers, and beach toys. Mark had to work, so he planned to join us Saturday morning. It would just be me and the girls for the first night. My sister Jennifer was already there when we arrived. She's 29, unmarried, and works as a pharmaceutical sales representative. She brought her boyfriend Derek, a guy she'd been seeing for about 8 months. My parents were there too, of course. Dad's retired from the lumber business, and Mom used to be a school administrator before she quit to help Dad manage his investments. Jennifer's 2 kids from a previous relationship were running around the property when we pulled up. Tyler is 8 and Madison is 10. Good kids, usually, though Jennifer tends to be pretty hands-off with her parenting style. She calls it letting them be independent. I call it negligence, but I'd never said that out loud before that weekend. We got there around 3 in the afternoon. The sun was bright and hot, unusual for Oregon even in July. Sophie had fallen asleep in her car seat during the drive, her blonde curls plastered to her forehead with sweat. Emma burst out of the van the moment I put it in park, already calling for her cousins. My mother came out of the main house to greet us. She's 61, tall and thin, with iron gray hair she keeps in a tight bun. She smiled when she saw us, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're late," she said instead of hello. "I told you to be here by 2. Traffic was bad coming through Salem, I replied, unbuckling Sophie from her seat. My daughter stirred but didn't wake up. "Well, we're having a barbecue tonight. Your father wants you to set it up since you're the one who insisted on bringing all that fancy meat from Portland." I had indeed brought grass-fed steaks and organic chicken from our local butcher. The meat cost a small fortune, but I'd wanted to contribute something nice to the reunion. "Sure, Mom. Just let me get the girls settled first." She'd already turned away, heading back into the house. Jennifer came around from the back deck, a wine glass in her hand even though it wasn't even 4 o'clock yet. "Rachel. You made it." She hugged me with her free arm. She smelled like Chardonnay and expensive perfume. "The kids are down by the river. You should let Emma go join them." "Maybe in a bit. I want to make sure everything's unloaded first." Jennifer rolled her eyes. "You're such a helicopter parent. Let her go have fun." I bit my tongue. Emma had already run off anyway, following the sound of her cousins' voices down the path toward the water. I carried Sophie inside to the guest room we always used, laid her on the bed, and surrounded her with pillows so she wouldn't roll off if she woke up before I got back. For the next hour, I hauled our supplies inside, organized the coolers, and started prepping for the barbecue. My father had set up the grill on the upper deck, which overlooked the river. It was a massive stainless steel thing he'd bought the previous summer, top of the line, with all the bells and whistles. Around 5 o'clock, Sophie woke up and toddled out to find me. She was clingy, the way toddlers get when they wake up in an unfamiliar place. She wrapped her arms around my leg as I seasoned the steaks. "Mama," she said, her voice still thick with sleep. "Hi, baby. Did you have a good nap?" She nodded, thumb in her mouth. Emma appeared next, soaking wet and grinning. "Mom, can we go out on the boat? Tyler and Madison are taking the little one out." The little one was a flat-bottomed aluminum boat with an outboard motor. It was stable enough, and the kids wore life jackets, but I didn't like the idea of Emma being out there without an adult. "Maybe later, sweetie." Stay where I can see you for now, okay? She pouted but didn't argue. Jennifer came up the deck stairs, her wine glass refilled. Oh, come on, Rachel. Let her go. Dad checked the boat this morning. It's fine. I said maybe later. My sister shrugged and leaned against the railing, watching the river. The current was stronger than usual. I could see it in the way the water moved around the dock pilings, faster and more aggressive than I remembered from previous summers. Has it been raining upriver? I asked. Some storm system moved through earlier this week, Jennifer said. Nothing major. But the current looked major to me. I made a mental note to keep the girls away from the water's edge. By 6 o'clock, I had everything ready to grill. The charcoal was hot, the meat was seasoned, and the side dishes my mother had prepared were laid out on the picnic table. My father came out with a beer, inspected my work, and grunted his approval. Jennifer, go get the kids, he said. Tell them it's time to eat. Jennifer pushed off from the railing and headed down toward the dock. I could see Tyler and Madison out on the water, maybe 50 yards from shore, shouting and laughing. Emma was building a sandcastle near the beach. Sophie was still attached to my leg. I tried to gently detach her so I could start grilling, but she whimpered and held on tighter. Sweetie, Mama needs to cook. Why don't you go sit at the table? No, she said, her bottom lip trembling. Jennifer came back up the path with the older kids in tow. Emma followed them, covered in sand. Derek emerged from the house with another round of beers for himself and my father. Okay, I said, looking around at my family. I need to focus on the grill so I don't burn anything. Can someone please keep an eye on Sophie? Sure, Jennifer said, barely looking up from her phone. Jennifer, I'm serious. The current is strong today. I don't want her near the water without someone watching her. Relax, Rachel. We've got her. My mother called from inside, asking for help with something in the kitchen. I hesitated, looking down at Sophie. Just go, Jennifer said. I'll watch her. I went inside, helped my mother carry out more dishes, and came back out less than 5 minutes later. The grill needed attention, and I started arranging the steaks, making sure they were positioned correctly over the coals. That's when I noticed the noise level had dropped. The kids were at the table, hunched over their phones. Jennifer and Derek were having a conversation near the railing. My parents were sitting in deck chairs, both absorbed in their own discussion about some property tax issue. I looked around, expecting to see Sophie playing nearby. She wasn't there. My heart did a strange little skip, the way it does when you think you've lost your phone but it's just in your other pocket. I scanned the deck again, thinking maybe she'd wandered behind the grill or was hiding under the table. Nothing. Where's Sophie? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. Nobody answered. They were all too absorbed in their own conversations. Hey, I said louder. Where's Sophie? Jennifer glanced up. What? My daughter. Where is she? You said you'd watch her. Oh, she went down to the boat with the kids. My blood turned to ice. What boat? When? Like 10 minutes ago. Tyler wanted to take it out again, and she wanted to go with them. I dropped the grilling tongs and ran to the railing. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the water. I could see the aluminum boat, but it was farther out than before, maybe 100 yards downstream from the dock. I could make out shapes inside it, but from this distance, I couldn't tell if one of them was Sophie. I ran down the path toward the dock, my feet slipping on the loose gravel. Behind me, I heard Jennifer say something dismissive to Derek. Tyler. I screamed when I got to the water's edge. Madison. They were too far away to hear me. The boat was drifting with the current, and while they had the motor, they weren't running it. They were just letting the river carry them along. I ran back up to the deck, my lungs burning. Jennifer, get down there and get that boat back right now. Sophie's on it. My sister frowned. She's not on it, Rachel. The kids are too old to want a toddler tagging along. You just said she went with them. I meant she went down to the dock with them. She probably came back up. She's not up here. My voice was rising, panic clawing at my throat. Did anyone actually see her come back? Silence. Nobody had been paying attention. My father stood up, irritated. Rachel, you're overreacting. The child is around here somewhere. Did anyone check the boat before the kids took it out? More silence. I ran back down to the dock and cupped my hands around my mouth. Tyler. Madison. Bring the boat back right now. This time, they heard me. Tyler waved, but instead of starting the motor, he just waved again and pointed downstream, like he was telling me they'd be back later. Now! I screamed, but my voice was getting hoarse. Derek finally came down to the dock, moving at a leisurely pace that made me want to shove him into the water. Want me to take the fishing boat out and get them? Yes. Hurry. But my father's fishing boat had a key start, and Derek couldn't find the keys. He patted his pockets, looked around the dock, then headed back up to the house to search for them. I stood on the dock, my hands shaking, watching the aluminum boat drift farther away. The current was pulling it faster now, around a bend in the river where the water narrowed and the speed picked up. That's when I saw it. A flash of pink against the silver bottom of the boat. Sophie's shirt was pink. Stop the boat. I screamed until my throat was raw. Tyler finally seemed to understand something was wrong. I saw him bend down, looking at something in the boat, and then he straightened up fast and reached for the motor. But here's the thing about cheap outboard motors on rental boats. They flood easily, especially when kids have been playing with them. Tyler pulled the starter cord once, twice, 3 times. The motor coughed but didn't catch. The boat went around the bend. I couldn't see it anymore. I ran back up to the deck, where my family was still standing around like nothing was happening. Call 911. Sophie's on that boat and it's heading downstream. Oh, for heaven's sake, my mother said. You're being hysterical. Mom. Call 911 right now or I swear to God. Jennifer stepped between us. Rachel, calm down. They'll get the motor started and come right back. The current is too strong. They're heading toward the rapids. 3 miles downstream, the river narrowed and dropped over a series of rocky rapids that had killed at least 2 people in the last decade. Warning signs were posted all along that section. My father finally seemed to register that this was serious. He pulled out his phone, but his hands were shaking as he tried to dial. Derek came running back from searching the house, keys finally in hand, and sprinted for the dock. I followed him, my vision narrowing to a tunnel. He got the fishing boat started and pulled away from the dock, heading downstream at full throttle. I wanted to go with him, but there wasn't time to argue about it. I stood on that dock for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. I called Mark and could barely get the words out. He said he was leaving work immediately, that he'd be there in 90 minutes. My mother came down to the dock and put her hand on my shoulder. Rachel, I'm sure she's fine. The children will take care of her. I shook off her hand. She's 2 years old. She can't swim. And you people were supposed to be watching her. We were watching her. Obviously you weren't. Don't take that tone with me. This is your fault for being so overprotective that we all thought you had her with you. I turned to look at my mother, this woman who'd raised me, who'd supposedly loved me. Are you seriously blaming me right now? I'm just saying, if you weren't so paranoid about everything, we wouldn't have assumed she was with you. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I turned back to watch the river, willing Derek's boat to appear around the bend. When it finally did, I saw 3 boats. Derek's fishing boat, the aluminum boat, and a sheriff's department vessel. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. They pulled up to the dock. Derek jumped out first, then helped Tyler and Madison. Then a sheriff's deputy stepped out, carrying a small pink bundle wrapped in an emergency blanket. Sophie. She was crying, which meant she was alive. I lunged forward and took her from the deputy, crushing her against my chest. She was soaking wet and shivering, but she was breathing and crying and alive. Mama, she sobbed into my neck. The deputy, a young woman named Officer Hayes, explained what happened. The kids had indeed let Sophie onto the boat without telling anyone. They thought it would be fun to bring her along. But when they drifted farther than intended and couldn't get the motor started, they'd panicked. Sophie had been crawling around the boat, and at some point, she'd fallen overboard. Madison had jumped in after her and managed to grab her, but both of them had been swept downstream. Tyler had finally gotten the motor started and caught up to them just as the sheriff's boat arrived, responding to my 911 call. Sophie had been in the water for approximately 6 minutes. 6 minutes. The deputy said we were lucky. The water was cold enough that Sophie's body had gone into a protective hypothermic state, which probably saved her brain from oxygen deprivation. But she needed to go to the hospital immediately for observation. I carried Sophie up to my van, grabbed Emma, and drove to the hospital in Salem with Officer Hayes following to take a formal statement. Mark met us there 90 minutes later, having broken every speed limit between Portland and Salem. Sophie had been admitted for observation. She had hypothermia and had aspirated some water, but the doctors were cautiously optimistic. They wanted to keep her for at least 48 hours. I stayed with her every minute. Mark stayed too, sleeping in a chair next to my bed. Emma was sent home with Mark's parents, who drove down from Seattle when they heard what happened. My family didn't come to the hospital. Not that first night, anyway. My mother called once. Around 10 p.m. I saw her name on my phone and almost didn't answer. But I picked up, thinking maybe she was calling to apologize. "How is she?" my mother asked. "She has hypothermia and water in her lungs, but she's stable." "Well, that's good. See? I told you it would be fine." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Mom, she almost died." But she didn't. Children are resilient. She'll bounce back. She was in the river for 6 minutes. And she's fine now. So maybe we can all stop with the dramatics. The dramatics. Yes. You've always been prone to overreacting. I know you were scared, but Jennifer feels terrible that you yelled at her. Jennifer feels terrible. Yes. You really hurt her feelings. I looked at Sophie, hooked up to monitors and in 4, her little chest rising and falling. "Mom, I have to go." "Well, call us tomorrow and let us know when you're coming back to get your things from the house." "I'm not coming back." "Don't be ridiculous. Your stuff is here." "Then throw it away." "I don't care." "Rachel." I hung up. Jennifer called an hour later. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. "Hey, it's me. Look, I'm sorry you're upset, but I don't think it's fair that you're blaming this on me. The kids are the ones who took Sophie on the boat without asking. And honestly, if you'd been watching her instead of worrying so much about that stupid barbecue, none of this would have happened. So maybe take some responsibility instead of making everyone else feel bad. Call me when you're ready to apologize." I listened to that voicemail 3 times, each time feeling that cold sensation in my chest grow larger. Mark watched me delete it. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that I'm done." "Done with what?" "All of them." Sophie was released from the hospital Sunday evening. The doctors were amazed at how quickly she'd recovered. She was laughing and playing with the stuffed animals the nurses had given her, showing no obvious signs of trauma. We drove home to Portland. I didn't call my family to let them know we were leaving. I didn't call to say Sophie was okay. I just left. On Monday morning, I went to work like normal. I'm a corporate attorney for a mid-sized firm specializing in contract law. I'm good at my job. I'm very good at it, actually. I've spent 15 years learning how to find loopholes, how to build airtight cases, how to destroy arguments so thoroughly that opposing counsel doesn't know what hit them. I sat at my desk and made a list. But first, I had to get through the immediate aftermath. The hospital bills started arriving within days. Our insurance covered most of it, but there were still thousands of dollars in co-pays and deductibles. Mark and I could afford it, but that wasn't the point. My family hadn't even asked about the cost. They hadn't offered to help pay for anything. Sophie had nightmares for the first 2 weeks. She'd wake up screaming, and I'd run to her room to find her thrashing in her bed, calling for me. The pediatrician said it was normal, that even though she didn't consciously remember the incident, her body remembered the trauma. We started seeing a child psychologist who specialized in early childhood trauma. More expenses my family knew nothing about because they never asked. Emma started having problems too. She'd become clingy and anxious, afraid to let me out of her sight. She'd watched her mother run around in a panic, had seen her baby sister carried off an ambulance boat, had spent hours in a hospital waiting room while doctors worked to stabilize Sophie. That leaves marks on a 6-year-old. So we found a therapist for Emma too. Twice a week, I drove her to appointments where she drew pictures of boats and rivers and talked about being scared. Mark's parents came down from Seattle to stay with us for a week. His mother, Patricia, helped with the girls while I went back to work. His father, Tom, sat me down one evening after the kids were in bed. "Have you heard from your family?" he asked. My mother called once. Jennifer left a voicemail blaming me for the whole thing. Tom's jaw tightened. He's a gentleman, a retired librarian, but I saw real anger flash across his face. "They blame you." Apparently, if I hadn't been so focused on the barbecue, I would have been watching Sophie myself. "You asked them to watch her." "I know. You specifically told them to watch her because of the current." "I know that too." Patricia came in from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. She'd heard the conversation. "Rachel, honey, you don't owe those people anything. Not after this." I'm starting to realize that. They stayed with us until I felt stable enough to manage on my own. When they left, Patricia hugged me tight and whispered, Whatever you decide to do, we support you. You're our daughter now, as much as Mark is our son." That meant more to me than I could express. I started therapy myself. Dr. Keisha Morrison had an office in downtown Portland, and she specialized in family trauma and estrangement. I saw her twice a week for the first month. "Tell me about your relationship with your parents before this happened," she said during our second week of sessions. I thought about it. Really thought about it, maybe for the first time in years. Distant. Conditional. They loved me when I was useful or when I made them look good. Any other time, I was an inconvenience. "Can you give me an example?" I told her about my law school graduation. I graduated summa cum laude, top 5% of my class. My parents had come to the ceremony but left immediately after to make it back home for some dinner party they'd committed to. They never asked to see my apartment, never took me out to celebrate, never acknowledged the achievement beyond a cursory congratulations. Jennifer, meanwhile, had dropped out of community college twice, but when she finally got her associate's degree, our parents threw her a massive party and bought her a car. "Why do you think there was such a difference in how they treated your accomplishments?" Dr. Morrison asked. Jennifer needed their help. I didn't. I was self-sufficient, so I was taken for granted. And how did that make you feel? Like I didn't matter unless I was struggling. The sessions helped me understand something crucial. The incident with Sophie wasn't an isolated moment of negligence. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being dismissed, overlooked, and treated as less important than my sister's wants or my parents' convenience. My father first. He's retired, but he's still on the board of directors for 3 different companies. His reputation in the business community is solid. He's known as a straight shooter, a man of integrity. I started with his taxes. My father had always been creative with his deductions. He told me about it over the years, bragging about how much money he'd saved by classifying personal expenses as business expenses for his various LLC holdings. He'd shown me the paperwork once, when I'd been in law school, explaining how smart it was to run everything through a business entity. At the time, I'd been impressed. Now, I pulled out my laptop and started documenting everything I could remember. Dates, amounts, specifics. Then I made some calls to people who might know more. It took me 3 days to build a complete picture. My father had been committing tax fraud for at least 15 years. Not small stuff either. We were talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in false deductions, unreported income, and fraudulent depreciation claims. I compiled everything into a detailed report, cross-referenced with IRS regulations and recent case law. Then I sent it anonymously to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I didn't feel guilty. I felt nothing. Next was Jennifer. My sister made good money in pharmaceutical sales, but she lived beyond her means. She borrowed money from our parents multiple times over the years, always with promises to pay it back that never materialized. But that wasn't what interested me. What interested me was her boyfriend Derek. Derek worked in real estate investment. Specifically, he bought distressed properties, did minimal repairs, and flipped them for profit. Jennifer had mentioned once that he'd been having trouble with some properties, something about permits and inspections. I did some digging. It turns out Derek had been forging inspection reports for properties he was flipping. He'd pay off one inspector to approve a property, then photocopy that signature onto reports for other properties that were never actually inspected. This is massively illegal and put buyers at serious risk. Jennifer knew about it. She'd laughed about it over Christmas dinner, saying Derek was clever for finding ways to save money on the boring bureaucratic stuff. I gathered evidence. Property records, inspection reports, timelines that didn't match up. Then I sent it all to the state licensing board and the district attorney's office, along with a detailed explanation of the fraud. Still no guilt. Still nothing. My mother was trickier. She didn't have any obvious legal vulnerabilities. She'd been a school administrator, then a housewife. Her name was on all my father's accounts, which meant she'd go down with him when the IRS came calling, but I wanted something specifically for her. It took me a week to find it. My mother sat on the board of a local charity, a nonprofit that provided after-school programs for underprivileged kids. She'd been treasurer for the past 8 years. She was proud of this position, often talking about how she was giving back to the community. I requested financial records from the charity, which were public information. Then I spent several late nights going through them line by line. The discrepancies were subtle, but they were there. Over the past 3 years, approximately $40,000 had been transferred from the charity's accounts to accounts controlled by my mother. The records listed these as consulting fees and reimbursements for expenses, but there was no documentation supporting these payments. My mother had been embezzling from a children's charity. I documented everything and sent it to the Oregon Department of Justice, along with the charity's board of directors. By the time I was done, it was early August. Sophie had recovered completely from her ordeal. She didn't remember falling in the river, which the pediatrician said was normal for a child her age. She played and laughed and drove Emma crazy the way little sisters do. Mark knew what I was doing. He didn't try to stop me. "Are you okay?" he asked one night as we lay in bed. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I'm not sorry. I didn't think you would be." The first domino fell in mid-August. My father received a letter from the IRS informing him that he was being audited for the previous 7 tax years, and that there were serious concerns about potential criminal violations. The IRS Criminal Investigation Division moves faster than standard audits when fraud is suspected, especially with detailed evidence handed to them on a silver platter. He called me, his voice shaking with rage. "Did you do this?" "Do what, Dad?" "The IRS. Someone sent them information about my businesses." "Why would I know anything about that?" "Because you're a lawyer. You know about this stuff." "I'm a contract lawyer, Dad. I don't do tax law." "This is your fault." "I know it is. You're trying to punish us because of what happened with Sophie." "Sophie could have died," I said calmly. "But you told me not to make a drama. You said the current always comes back. That was different." "I didn't mean. You told me she'd be fine. You told me to start cooking because the kids were hungry." Silence on the other end. "How's that working out for you, Dad? Are the kids still hungry?" I hung up. 2 weeks later, Derek was arrested. The news made the local papers, real estate investor charged with fraud, forgery. The article mentioned that he defrauded multiple home buyers, putting families at risk by selling properties with serious safety issues that had never been properly inspected. Jennifer called me screaming, "You bitch. You destroyed his life." "I didn't forge inspection reports, Jennifer. He did that himself." "You reported him. Don't pretend you didn't." "Did I? Prove it." "His career is over. We were going to get married." "Were you? That's nice. How are Tyler and Madison doing, by the way?" "What?" "Your kids. Remember them? The ones who left Sophie alone on a boat? Do they feel bad about almost killing their cousin?" "They're children. They made a mistake. Sophie's also a child. But you didn't have time to wait for her." Jennifer started crying. "Why are you doing this?" "I'm not doing anything. I'm just letting the current take its course. It always comes back, right?" I hung up. My mother was the last one. In September, she was removed from the charity board and reported to law enforcement for embezzlement. The local news covered it, former school administrator accused of stealing from children's charity. The irony was not lost on anyone. She didn't call me. Instead, my father did. "Your mother is in the hospital," he said. His voice sounded old, defeated. "She had a breakdown when the police came to question her. She's on suicide watch." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I was. "Sort of. It's complicated. How can you do this to us? We're your family." "You were my family," I corrected. "You stopped being my family when you let my daughter drift away on a boat and told me not to make a drama about it." "We made a mistake. People make mistakes. You didn't make a mistake, Dad. You made a choice. All of you did. You chose not to watch her. You chose not to care. You chose to tell me I was overreacting when I was terrified. So you destroyed our lives?" "No," I said. "I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of your own actions. There's a difference. The IRS is saying I might go to prison. Do you understand that? Prison. Probably you should have thought about that before committing tax fraud for 15 years. I'm your father. And Sophie is your granddaughter. She was 2 years old, and you let her float away on a boat. You told me the current always comes back." "Oh my God." His voice broke. "You're insane. You're actually insane." "Maybe. Or maybe I finally woke up and realized that being family doesn't mean I have to accept being disrespected, dismissed, and gaslit when my child nearly dies because of your negligence." "We didn't think." "That's exactly right, Dad. You didn't think. And now you're paying for it." I hung up and blocked his number. It's been over a year and a half now. The legal system moves slowly, but it moves. My father's case took 14 months to resolve. His lawyer managed to negotiate a plea deal that will likely keep him out of prison, but he'll be paying restitution and fines for the rest of his life. His reputation is destroyed. Two of the boards he sat on asked him to resign. Derek's case moved faster since he took a plea deal early on. He got 2 years in prison and lost his real estate license permanently. Jennifer broke up with him while he was awaiting sentencing. She had to move back in with our parents because she couldn't afford her apartment without Derek's income. My mother avoided criminal charges for the embezzlement after paying back the full amount and entering a mental health diversion program. But she's been blacklisted from charity work in the area, and the shame has essentially made her a hermit. She rarely leaves the house. Mark's cousin Rebecca reached out to me around this time. She'd heard through the family grapevine what had happened, both at the river and afterward with the legal troubles. We met for coffee one Saturday while Mark watched the girls. "I need to tell you something," Rebecca said, stirring her latte nervously. "About Jennifer?" "What about her?" "This isn't the first time something like this has happened with her kids." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Rebecca explained that 3 years ago, when Madison was 7 and Tyler was 5, Jennifer had left them alone at a public pool while she went to the bar next door for drinks with friends. A lifeguard had found Tyler floating face down in the deep end. He'd survived, but it had been close. Jennifer had never told the family. She'd sworn the lifeguard and pool staff to secrecy by threatening to sue them for not watching him closely enough. "How do you know about this?" I asked. My sister was the lifeguard. She's never forgiven herself for not reporting Jennifer to Child Protective Services. She was young and scared of getting sued. I felt sick. "So Jennifer has a pattern of neglect?" "Yes. And your parents covered for her that time too. They paid off the pool to keep it quiet and made sure no one filed a report." This information sat in my chest like a stone. My family hadn't just been careless with Sophie. They'd enabled Jennifer's dangerous parenting for years, prioritizing the family's reputation over children's safety. I thought about Tyler and Madison. Good kids who deserved better than a mother who couldn't be bothered to watch them and grandparents who covered up her negligence rather than addressing it. After Rebecca left, I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried. Not for my parents or Jennifer, but for all the kids who'd been put at risk because no one wanted to hold them accountable. When the news about Derek's arrest broke, several of his victims reached out to local media. I watched an interview with a young couple who'd bought one of his flip houses. They discovered after moving in that the electrical system was completely unsafe, installed without permits or proper inspections. Their house had nearly caught fire with their newborn baby inside. The wife cried during the interview. "We trusted the inspection report. We thought we were buying a safe home for our daughter." Jennifer had known. She'd laughed about Derek's clever shortcuts at Christmas dinner, while these people had no idea they were living in a fire hazard. Some people called me vindictive when word got out that I'd been the one who reported everyone. Mark's brother James confronted me at a family barbecue at Patricia and Tom's house. "Don't you think you went too far?" James asked. "They're facing serious consequences." "Not as serious as Sophie would have faced if Madison hadn't jumped in after her," I replied calmly. 6 minutes in cold water. The doctors said another minute or two and she would have had permanent brain damage or died. But they didn't mean for it to happen. They didn't mean to prevent it from happening either. That's the problem. I haven't spoken to any of them since those final phone calls. My children are thriving. Sophie turned 3 in May, a full 10 months after the incident. She loves swimming now, ironically enough. We enrolled her in lessons, and she's like a little fish in the water. She has no memory of what happened that day. Emma just turned 7 last month. She still asks about her grandparents sometimes, and I tell her the truth, that sometimes families grow apart when people make choices that hurt each other, and that's okay. Not every relationship can or should be saved. Mark supports me completely. His parents have stepped in to fill the grandparent role, and they're wonderful with the girls. They'd never let a 2-year-old drift away on a boat and then tell the mother not to be dramatic about it. Do I regret what I did? People keep asking me that. Friends who know what happened, co-workers who heard the gossip, even my therapist. The answer is complicated. I regret that my children don't have a relationship with my parents. I regret that things got to a point where I felt this was necessary. I regret that my family valued their own convenience and pride over my daughter's safety. But do I regret reporting their crimes? Do I regret letting the systems they cheated and abused finally catch up with them? No. I don't. Because here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud, sometimes forgiveness isn't the answer. Sometimes the right thing to do is walk away and let people face the natural consequences of their actions without you there to shield them. My family taught me that when they casually told me my daughter would just be there after floating down a river with a dangerous current. They taught me that my concerns didn't matter, That my panic was an overreaction, that their convenience was more important than my child's life. So I learned the lesson. I learned it well. I didn't shout at them that day. I didn't throw a tantrum or make a scene. I just quietly documented their crimes, sent the evidence to the appropriate authorities, and stepped back to watch the current carry them away. They told me the current always comes back. They were wrong. Sometimes the current takes you so far downstream that there's no coming back from it. Sometimes you go over the rapids and you don't survive the fall. Sometimes karma doesn't need help, but when it does, I'm happy to point it in the right direction. My daughter is alive and healthy because Madison jumped in the water to save her, not because my family cared enough to keep her safe in the first place. And every time I look at Sophie's smile, I remember exactly what my father said to me that day. Don't make a drama. Tomorrow she'll be just there. He was right about one thing. Sophie was there the next day. But my family? They weren't. They'll never be there again, because I made sure of that. And I sleep just fine at night.